Welcome to the Good Intention Show, coming to you live on the UI Radio Network. The Good Intention Show is sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation at unitedintentions.org, a virtual community where you learn to create, track, and manifest your passions one intention at a time. Look for us on Blog Talk, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and many more. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram under United Intentions and on Twitter at Higher Intention. Yes, this is the Good Intention Show, where you will meet people who live life intentionally and hear about things they're not telling you in the mainstream media. And now, here's the truth seeker, the snake charmer, a legend in his own mind, broadcasting live all over the universe, your host, Mr. Tim Ray.
Yes, another show, the Good Intention Show with Tim Ray and Dr. Sam Makarski, and we are just going to be talking about breathing today. Sounds like a pretty boring subject, actually, if I think about it. Let's change it. Let's talk about, like, chemtrails or something. All right, okay, no. Well, breathing can be related to chemtrails,
right.
Isn't it? Actually, it is going to be a fantastic subject because we take probably for granted one of the most important things that we do every day is breathing, and the power of it. We're going to be getting into the specifics, why it's so important, what does it do for us, not only for ourselves, what does it do for other people. And so many other things we bring up, too, which I just thought of. It was like Dr. Zach Bush talks about how when we breathe in these microbes of other people's energies, it changes the whole state of where we are. So if you go to a different place, you're bringing in different microbes, which you swap all the time with people. So it's not just breathing, just an act of breathing, but it's the sharing of what's in the air and what we bring in and into our lungs and out of our lungs, right? So it's going to be a really neat, unique show today with the doc, and I think you're going to enjoy that very much. Again, Sam is here, and you can reach him at drsampt.com. However, before we go to that, let me mention a few things, what's going on here. Download our free UI Radio app, and you'll get to hear my shows whenever you want. Simply go to the App Store on your iPhone and type the UI Radio Network. And not only my shows, but you'll hear all 8 or 9, I don't know how many have, different hosts now, shows 24 hours, 7 days a week. So go to your App Store and download UI Radio Network, and you can hear our shows 24 hours, 7 days a week, anytime you choose to. Of course, we have Doc here today, and also follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and United Intentions at Higher Intentions on Twitter. And, of course, a hello to our WDJY listeners, 99.1. Check that out, either on the site or go listen to where you are on the radio. They're all over Atlanta, Georgia, and many other states, too, I believe. So I don't know even where to start, honestly, Doc. Tell us a little about you first. Where'd you come from? Who are you? Why are you sitting next to me?
I was born a health raiser, Tim. From a small town in upstate New York, and now I'm here sitting next to you.
Well, you started a consultant company called Health Raising Consulting, and was this always a dream come true that you wanted to do your own business, or did you like working for the man?
Yeah, no, I wanted to do my own thing.
You don't like working for the man?
I've always been an independent thinker, for sure. Actually born son of a health and science teacher, so that was part of my path, and it's definitely my dharma to raise health in the world. And yeah, Health Raisers Consulting is my company, and basically when people reach out to me, I teach them how to raise health for businesses, organizations, individuals, and anyone else that's willing to listen.
Well, you do it well, because I tell you, you have such you have a I don't know, pragmatic, very common sense level of health, where a lot of people just, common sense is not so common, right? And I think because of that, a lot of people will just, you'll say certain things and they stay in the routine. They don't change. They don't even look at really anything to make a major change, because they don't perhaps see the need for it until they have a acute illness, whether it's a heart attack or it's fainting spells, whatever it may be. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe I need to start listening to my body. Your approach to health raising is raising it up first, where they could start being preventative about what's going on, so they don't have to have that acute illness, right?
Yeah, that is the goal, is to not get to that place where you have some major wake-up call that makes you finally value your health. And that's always a goal of mine, to empower people with the skills, the tools, knowledge, and resources they need to take charge of their health and their life and be their own therapist, their own doctor, and their own coach, their own trainer, everything, all wrapped up in one, so that they can stay happy and healthy.
You know, and what I love about what you do, Sam, is that you actually live this. I mean, you literally live what you teach, and it's not easy to do. Trust me. I mean, I created the foundation and a bunch of different things, and even for me to stay true on my intentions every day, and I'm always having awakenings myself at any given moment. But it is not easy to walk your talk. It really is not. I mean, in anything I think that you do, it's not. But I think once you do embrace that, and there is that continuity of what you're saying and what you're doing, does life become a little easier, or what do you think, or does it become harder? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a fine line between insanity and congruency. I think, but I think in all fields, it's the hardest to be a hypocrite in the healthcare field. I mean, you see a lot of it, but the point is, if you're truly walking your talk, people can see it. You know, they're going to see it or see right through it, one or the other. I mean, you can get away with it maybe in some other professions. You can kind of hide a little bit, but not in this profession. I mean, people, they meet you and talk to you, they're either going to see right through you or they're going to see the value in what you're offering.
Yeah, so you go see your doctor who's, obese, overweight, smoking cigarettes, and, you probably have to question, whether they're really giving good advice or not, right? Because the nutrition's not really much of an issue to them at that point.
Yeah, nor some other things, obviously. And I know everybody goes through their challenges, but it's a matter of, yes, I would hope that whoever you're getting your health advice from is at least somewhat healthy.
Yeah. Well, we take it for granted because we just, our mindset's kind of like God. You see God as this guy living with a white beard, living on a cloud, right? So you think of a doctor, you just think of, I don't know, Dr. House? No, maybe I think of him, but I don't know. But but the point is, you have this envision of what a doctor's supposed to look like. But when you go see your doctor, it's like, wow, maybe I should pick a doctor who's really into preventative care and wants to take care of himself, because then he'll more likely be in tune to giving you better advice on how to take care of yourself, right?
Absolutely. People need to always keep in mind that the word doctor comes from doctorus or doctori, which means teacher or to teach. So your doctor, first and foremost, if you consult one, should be a very good teacher. If they're not, I would highly recommend getting a new one, because that's ultimately what he or she should be able to do with you, because when you think about it, no doctor, trainer, therapist, coach in the world can eat better for you, sleep better for you, exercise better for you. They can only teach you how to do it, and then you have to take charge and do it for yourself. So definitely doctor means teacher.
Right. Well, you can't argue with that. So we're going to be talking about breathing today, and why that's so important in general. And I have to say, when somebody says, focus on your breathing, it's probably one of the easier things to do, because it immediately allows you can have a visualization of perhaps your lungs expanding, right? And you could feel that because you could just slow down and focus on that. And I don't know if that's just an old meditative trick to focus on your breathing first, or if there's more of a priority reason why people say focus on your breathing first. But it just seems like it's a little bit easier, like try to listen to your heartbeat or focus on your breathing. And the reason I bring that up is because we're going to be talking about our breath and how important breathing is today, and not only in many different activities that we do, but just in general, in just everyday life. But I guess my question first with breathing is, why is it probably so taken for granted every day? I mean, why do you think?
I think it's one of the greatest gifts given to us, and like a lot of gifts, people take things for granted. When you think about it, breath literally defines our life, from the first one you take to the last one you take. It's literally a definition of our whole lifespan. And here's what I think people take for granted, because they make the assumption that because they're breathing, they must be doing it correctly. Right? There's a big difference between breathing and breathing correctly. You're breathing enough to stay alive, but are you breathing well enough to thrive? And that is the biggest difference. You're breathing well enough to be alive, but are you breathing well enough to thrive? And that's what I think people take for granted. Well, I must be doing it right. I mean, I'm walking around like a zombie.
I mean, well, yeah. Well, I mean, I get that, but didn't God create us, our normal breathing ways to be how we normally should breathe? I mean, did God say, hey, listen, you're going to have to do this yoga here, or otherwise you're not going to be able to be a human? I mean, how do you define breathing correctly? I mean, like now, am I breathing correctly? Or?
Well, I would say first and foremost, we were designed to breathe correctly, but there's so many distractions, especially in today's world, that people are constantly taken from their breath. and away from their breath, that they don't focus on it. And when I was growing up even, and if I were to get upset, or even if I watched other people get upset, the common advice was, oh, calm down and take a deep breath. Of course, that's all it did is piss you off even more, because no one wants to be told to calm down. No one said, come on, hey, let's breathe together, and actually put their hands on your rib cage or your lower abdomen and have you breathe fully into your emotions, so to speak, and help transmute them. That would have been a better thing to say. Come on, let's breathe together. Let's breathe through this.
Yeah.
Not let's get through this. Like getting through something is almost suggests fight or flight or survival mode. Breathing through it is a transmutation of whatever it is bothering you, so that you can move on in a much more smoother fashion.
Yeah, so word of advice out there: if you really want to kind of alleviate a situation, don't say don't say calm down. All right, the worst thing you could say is calm down. I mean, yeah. Honestly, how many times people said that to you, right? Like, man, you just made me more wired up, right? So, outside of that, so you're saying, this is interesting. You're saying when you're in a midst of, let's say, anxiety, anger, whatever the case may be, your breathing is up more so, I would say, right? Or breathing is more elevated or more active. So you're saying, instead of just trying to not ignore it, but just shut it down, you're saying to embrace it. Because if you don't have somebody there saying, hey, do this with me, I'm sure you could do this on your own. You're saying to embrace it, go through it.
Yeah, allow breath to actually help you move through something and even transmute it to where you can get back into a balanced state of being. So very often when I ask people about emotions, I say, well, how are you feeling? Well, I'm angry. And then, of course, they say, well, that's not an emotion. That pisses them off even more. Don't tell me I'm angry, damn it. I'm like, okay, but that's not an emotion. That's not really a feeling anyway. So here's the drill. When you're feeling something, and let's say you were upset, and I had you close your eyes and say, okay, what do you feel? And they say, well, it feels tight. Okay, that's a feeling. Okay, it feels tight. Where does it feel tight? In the center of my chest. Good. So now you know where it's stuck, where the energy is stuck, and what it feels like. So we're going to breathe into that space and open that space, and even visualize the opposite. We're going to breathe in looseness or letting go or relaxation into that tight area. Because anger is not really technically, a feeling. It's
emotion.
Yeah, it's like energy in motion. It's an emotion. But the feelings are what people need to learn to actually tune into. Hard, soft, hot, cold, tight, loose, rough, smooth. Those are the important things, because you could ask 3 different people who are angry how they feel, and they'll all describe it differently.
See, this is the common sense I'm talking about. That the doc brings to reality for everyone. Honestly, I would. How many times you say being angry is a feeling, right? I'm angry, right? How do you feel? Yeah. I'm angry. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you don't even think twice about saying that, right?
Right.
So here it is. We're trying to be accurate here, because how important it is to distinguish between a feeling, because we're so lethargic. We're such a disconnected society when it comes to feelings and distractions and all the other stuff. Our pineal gland is just totally disconnected on so many different levels, and more levels than you probably don't know how it happens. and I'm telling you, we're just misunderstanding. And you just brought it home, Doc, where you're saying now that, to really focus on the feeling is a feeling, it has like a location to it. It has what else? An energetic response to it, right?
Yeah, it's visceral. I mean, you will feel the actual feeling, where the emotion is more of something that you might associate with because it's a cultural conditioning. Like, well, it's joy, it's happiness, it's anger, it's this. But that doesn't teach you how to feel it or how to be in touch. And as a physical therapist, I'm always touching people, and I'm always actually tuning into them as well. So I mean, I can literally feel people's feelings at times, even if they can't describe it. I actually know what they're feeling as soon as I touch them. And I know your producer over here is hip to that, because I actually just worked with him. We won't mention his name for confidentiality's sake, but he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
We'll call him Louise. How about that?
Louise. So you can really just tune into something and the feelings that the body is going through. And breath is the ultimate tool. It really is. And interestingly enough, the Greek derivation, I believe it is Greek, the derivation of the word diaphragm means mind. Isn't that interesting? The mind-body connection. The Greeks knew it. The word diaphragm actually translates into the word mind. So they actually knew that there was a connection between the mind-body and the mind emotions. And the diaphragm is one of the key breathing muscle, and also the connection in that connection.
Well, I love the aspect of it being tied to history, and I get that. But why? I mean, why diaphragm? Why breathing? And why is breathing so important, though? I mean, just because of, I get it. It gives us life. You know, you literally can number how many days you're going to live in this world by how many breaths you have, and I understand that part of it. So let's just look at a kind of more right now. Let's look at a not superficial level. Let's look at a more medical level or
Absolutely.
Pragmatic level. What breath does and breathing in and out does to the body.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that. We've got a couple shows for this. No, just kidding. We'll keep it simple, of course. Okay. So first,
you never thought we'd be talking about breath for a whole hour, did you?
Yeah.
You're going to hear it today.
You're gonna hear it. So first and foremost, it's one of the fastest ways to actually regulate the pH of the body. Now, I know that's a big thing that people have gotten into, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, because I see it showing up in even everyday conversations about acid alkaline or the pH of the body, and everyone's trying to shift this with water or food and all that. And there might be some influence there, but people need to really remember that the body really regulates its pH through many of its own mechanisms, not necessarily the things you're taking exogenously, into your body. So breathing is one of the fastest ways to regulate your pH. So that's first and foremost, because as we know, for example, like something like a condition such as cancer is said to not thrive well in oxygenated tissue. Well, one of the best ways to oxygenate the body is to do what? To breathe correctly. Shift the pH, it will happen automatically. So that's one of the vital things that ends up happening, is that the pH shifts in a direction that is conducive to homeostasis, which is a balanced state of the body. The other thing is detoxification, since we kind of alluded to that. That's become such a huge buzzword. Everybody's detoxing all the time, and I'm not making fun of it. I'm not saying that's not true. It is, and that's exactly the point. The body is always detoxifying itself because it's built to. And one of the fastest, most efficient ways to detoxify the body that's affordable and sustainable if you do it correctly is breathing. If you're considering that your kidneys and your liver's working correctly, and that's questionable in America, but let's say it's working fairly well, your lungs actually remove up to 65% of the toxins that come into your body.
Whoa. So you're seriously, your breathing, your lungs actually detoxifies inside your body, gets into the tissue and all those, whatever the toxin may be. Does it also include the metals that are being overdosed or no?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways of looking at that. Interestingly, in Chinese medicine, the lung and large intestine meridians go hand in hand. Now, in America, people focus so much on colon health, like getting colonics and detoxifying with clays and herbs and tonics. And again, there may be a place for that, but let's not forget the driving force and even the mirror of that is the lungs and how important the lungs are. Wow. When you are breathing correctly as well, like and you're taking air and you're fully expanding your lungs, your diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle, considering if it is correctly shaped. A lot of people's is misshapen, it's become flattened. It's almost as if they went, and they got stuck that way. They inhaled, which is a good, scare, fear response. But when the lungs are fully inflated and the diaphragm descends, you have to understand that there are other things that are actually connected to your diaphragm, such as your liver physically connects to your diaphragm. So does your stomach. So does part of your colon. So when your diaphragm is moving, it's actually massaging your internal organs. So that's one of the things that happens that's vitally important. The other thing is it actually physically connects to the spine. There's actually something called the crura of the diaphragm that connects to the lumbar spine, which is the low back vertebrae. And if you picture this, just kind of get a visual, close your eyes. The spine is somewhat of an S shape if it's shaped correctly with these primary and secondary curves. But now picture the spine being played like an accordion. So if your diaphragm is moving correctly, your spine is actually being moved almost like an accordion up and down. And guess what that does? It keeps all the discs nice and healthy and lubricated, all the bones strong, and the nerves healthy. So that's the other benefit it does. And since the nerves control a lot of things in the body, such as organs and muscles, then their end organs, the end product of the nerves functioning correctly are properly functioning organs and muscles. The other thing is that there are major tubes, we could call them garden hoses if you want, that run through the diaphragm. One is the aorta, that is the major blood vessel artery that comes off your heart and splits into several vessels, like the brachial artery is your arm, your femoral artery is the big one in your legs. Well, that pierces right through the diaphragm. So you can see where if your diaphragm was constricted and you're not breathing correctly, how it might affect your blood pressure or your circulation in general. The other tube is the vena cava, which is the big vein that carries blood back to the heart, and that is vitally important as well because you have to get venous drainage or you're going to get pooling in your legs and arms and you're going to suffer from swelling. The other one is called a thoracic duct, which is the major lymph channel that carries the lymph, which is the fluid that escapes out into the tissues around the cells and is brought back into the circulatory system. The thoracic duct is a huge player in that system, and all three of those garden hoses run through the diaphragm. So if the diaphragm is not moving well or it's tight because you're holding emotions there, like oh, I hate their guts, or I can't stomach this, or that galls me, our language, right? Yeah, our language reflects how our.
It's a heartbreaker.
Yes, that's right. Our organs are discharge centers of emotion. Yeah, heartbreaker. Well, that's good because the diaphragm also connects up to the pericardium, which is the sac around your heart. And yes, it massages the heart as well. And then the other thing that travels along with another tube is the esophagus, which is the food tubes. So from your throat to your stomach, you have this tube called your esophagus. Well, along with that is also the vagus nerve, which is the long nerve. You have two, one on the right, one on the left. It's one of the cranial nerves that is vitally important for calming the body down. So the vagus system is the, quote, relaxation response, or the rest and digest, or the feed, breathe, and breathe system. Parasympathetic. So there's something called parasympathetic stroke. So when the diaphragm moves and it's actually moving up and down, it's actually stroking that nerve along that pathway, and it's keeping the body balanced and calm.
Literally, you're physically calming down the part of your organ there. I mean, that's pretty neat.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm in class right now.
I know.
Health Razor class, baby. Health Razor class.
I should be taking notes.
This is part of the academy.
Well, the nice part about this is that you're able to go back and re-listen to it, and kind of honestly, this is brilliant information. I never really knew. In fact, I now kind of look at my lungs as maybe they're second runner up to my heart as being the most influential. Yeah. It should win maybe Academy Award here. The lungs got no play. It's like the redheaded stepchild, right? And it does so much. We don't even realize it. And it's connected apparently, Doc, to almost every aspect, other organs and parts of our body that we never really knew.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that breathing enhances every function of the body. So, I mean, when you think about how important breathing is, then you would think, like, okay, then breathing well is one of the most important things we could ever do.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to that next level, is exactly what you just said. But before we go, I want to get into breathing well after the break. Not yet, though, but after the break. But let's talk a little bit more about what other parts of the lungs and the breathing affects the other parts. So our heart has a direct relationship. Our spine, you're saying, our other organs, from liver to kidneys to any other organ that doesn't reach? Because I guess it would have to, because the breathing is just so imperative.
Yeah, it's really, when you start to look at breathing, it's a
blood flow, your circulatory system.
Oh yeah. I mean, because again, the effects on all those garden hoses we mentioned, and also just there is, beside a respiratory diaphragm, there's technically a pelvic diaphragm, there is a thoracic diaphragm, and there's one in the cranium, a cranial diaphragm. They all move transversely across the body like toll booths almost, and they all have to be in sync with one another as well. And so when the diaphragms are moving correctly, the whole body is definitely happy and healthy.
Okay, so a couple of other areas that we left out, which gets very little play in MD school, is the lymphatic system. How does breathing work with the lymphatic system? Because I hear all the time, lymph nodes are blocked with, I don't know, air has to do with moving it, but there seems to be a lot of blockages with our lymphatic system, which is basically the brains of the immune system, or whatever. They're not brains, but it's a process of it. But so how does it affect our lymphatic system?
Absolutely. Again, as I mentioned, the thoracic duct is one of the main channels in the lymphatic system. It runs through the diaphragm. So the lymph system is said sometimes to not have a pump. I would debate that point. One of them would be, just external muscles. The other would be the diaphragm. But it is a low pressure system like the venous system, whereas the heart actually pumps, it has this pump, so to speak, into the arterial system. But there's no doubt that the diaphragm is a major pump for the lymphatic system. So if your diaphragm is not working correctly, either is your lymphatic system, which would explain why a lot of people have such a major amount of congestion. Because if you really start to pay attention to people when you're out in public and you just watch them, you will see then breathe very, very poorly.
Wow. Well, yeah, and I guess there's a certain way to it. And the only thing that comes to my mind, Doc, is that when I look at a new infant baby, what's predominant in that baby's movement, especially when they're sleeping, really, it's not the heartbeat, it's not the movement of the fingers or the eyes or the head or whatever. It's the breathing. It's almost like as if the breathing is taking over the whole baby, from their little toes to the top of their heads. You almost see this wave go through them,
Yes, absolutely. And that's I started alluding to before. Breathing should be a full body phenomenon. That's why when people talk about belly breathing, I don't personally like that term much, because it precipitates a breathing pattern that still could look correct, but it's still not. It's almost pseudo-diaphragmatic breathing, which we can talk about a little bit later. But the reality of it is, it is a full body phenomenon. It's interesting you said wave, because you can actually do a diagnostic on somebody where if you lay them on the table, like prone lying, which means on your stomach, and you say take a deep breath in, a lot of times you'll see one segment of the spine move, quote, if I'm pronouncing this right, en bloc, meaning it's a whole block that just kind of moves up and down, and it's classically in someone's upper back thoracic spine. You should see a wave from their sacral bone all the way up into their spine, up into their cranium. That should be a wave, but a lot of times you just see this, like just in the thoracic spine, which will tell you all those other parts are locked down, and this is where all this tension is. So yeah, waveform is vitally important.
Wow. I just wonder, and I don't know if you have stats on it, but I'll put you to the test. What percentage do you think of let's just say, stick with American people since we're here in America, you believe are breathing incorrectly? Okay. Or not fully. Let's say not fully.
I'd say over 90%.
Oh my God, you're kidding me, man.
No.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no.
Is there anything that we can't do right anymore? Honestly, I'm just so disappointed in myself here. But okay, so we are not breathing correctly. You basically
or fully.
You're
breathing correctly enough to stay alive.
Okay. Yeah, stay alive, right? and so I guess my point is when we're born, we're breathing correctly, because I see that baby, full body wave breath, right? So you're saying somewhere between when we're born and we're breathing correctly, it's an environmental factor, it's a learned behavior that we learn not to breathe correctly for the rest of our lives.
Pretty much. Yeah, you nailed it. So So you have environmental conditions, and you have cultural conditioning, emotional, type things, structural. Deviations can cause restricted breathing. Let's say the baby was born with a normal birth, vaginal delivery, and came out okay, but then somehow had a trauma in childhood that created a structural issue. That can definitely set somebody up as well for breathing issues the rest of their life.
Fascinating. Do you think kids get a pass where they're breathing correctly, and then, of course, as we make them adults, we screw them up like everything else we do with kids?
Oh, there's no doubt that's one of the things. As soon as a kid says, "I want to be like the big people in the tribe," it's over. It's over.
So, all right, we're gonna take a break here. But when we get back, let's talk about where we screw up our kids on breathing, and when does it usually happen, and how. And later on in the show, we'll get into what we can do to fix the problem. All right?
Awesome.
We're talking to Dr. Sam Makarski, and we're talking about breathing. All about breathing, which is probably now I realize one of the most fundamental and important aspects of what we do every day. So put down your pencils and pens and just listen clearly. It's about breathing. We'll be right back.
The number of premature infants born in the United States each year, 380,000. That's 9.8% of the total births in the U.S. The Foundation for Premature Infants' mission is to advocate for the right of all premature infants to be cared for in a developmentally supportive and age-appropriate manner. Our vision is to ensure that Premature Infants' Bill of Rights is the standard of care for all babies born prematurely 24 hours per day, 365 days per year on all shifts in every neonatal intensive care unit throughout the world. Please consider making a donation by visiting us on Facebook, Foundation for Premature Infants, or at our website, foundationforprematureinfants.org.
Wow, that's heavy, but it's so important. Talk about breathing issues, right? Yeah, it's such a tough road to go when you're being born right out of the gate with either breathing issues or problems with as an infant, and it's just a hard way to go. But we're back with Dr. Stan Makarski. We're talking about breathing. You catch him at the Health Raising Consulting. His website is drstanpt.com. I should say his way to reach him. So, wow, I just had no idea how important breathing is, at least on effects of our whole body, and we just, like I said, we take it for granted. So we left off, and we were just basically talking about how our society kind of messes people up on how to breathe correctly. So let's first talk about what's not breathing correctly, and then let's talk about what is breathing correctly. All right?
Sure.
All right.
Sure. We can do that.
You're so hard to please, Doc.
Yeah, no. That's good. I think we'll start, too, with this. You know, one of the things to consider is that you can live days and weeks without food and water and only minutes without air. And yet people obsess about what they eat and drink and don't give much attention to how they're breathing. I mean, when is the last time you heard someone say, man, I wonder how I'm going to breathe later? You know, but they're sure as heck thinking about what they're going to eat.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm wondering what I'm going to breathe later.
Yeah. Like, am I going to breathe fully and deeply later? Am I going to be a conscious being later? Or am I just going to shut down?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to your initial question here. One of the things that we see a lot in America is called paradoxical breathing or inverted breathing, which means when people breathe in, they actually suck their abdomen in and their chest and shoulders rise up toward their ears. So if you say, take a deep breath or allow a breath in, they go, and their belly actually goes inward and their shoulders rise up like toward their ears. So if you wanted to run a simple test, you could just sit in a chair, put a mirror in front of you, and just allow a breath to come in. And if you see your shoulders rise up right away or the muscles on the side of your neck, top of your shoulders bulge out a little bit or fire really quick, yes, then you failed the test miserably, you know, so to speak. But it's a matter of that kind of breathing is definitely what's considered upper chest breathing, or even I would say survival breathing or fight or flight breathing. And so many people are just stuck there. If you watch the way most people text, I mean, their shoulders are already up toward their ears and they're looking down. And that's a double whammy, because as soon as you throw your head forward and crank your neck, you're actually compressing the brainstem, which actually regulates breathing. So it's a vicious circle of, you know, pain, just that circuit of, okay, I'm not breathing correctly, and I'm triggering the thing that's going to make me not breathe correctly, and it's just perpetuated. And that's maybe why we see so many people react, you know, in today's world instead of respond.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's vitally important. So that's one of the things is, are you an inverted breather? Which means, are you sucking your abdomen in and your shoulders and neck muscles bulging out when you breathe in? So that's something to pay attention to, because you don't want to be doing that all the time. The other thing is, what is the ratio of your inhale to exhale, and is it smooth or is it ratchety? A lot of people take this breath in where you see them kind of, and then you watch the exhale and it's like, which is faulty. So there's this long inhale, a pause at the top, and then a quick exhale. So they're breathing in, and it's they're not fully expelling the air out of their lungs, and the pause is at the top, where technically there should just be, the breath should come in, back out, and the exhalation should pretty much be at least as long as the inhalation, if not a little bit longer. A natural pause at the bottom of the breath before you breathe back in. And that's not what people do at all. There's like no pause at the bottom, and the pause is at the top, and it's a really quick exhale. So
it sounds like as your body's you're breathing in, you're detoxifying your body. If you have a quick exhale, you're not getting it out of your body in time.
Exactly. If you're not breathing fully and exhaling, look at it this way too. The metaphor of breath to life. Your ability to breathe in is to be able to take in your environment, to be in the moment and take in the experience you're having, which some people have a hard time with that. That's why their breath's very, it's very quick, because that's the state they're in all the time. Your ability to exhale, metaphorically, is to be able to let go. To let go in life, to let go of tension, to let go of control, the need to be in control, the need to be right, the need to argue, the need all the needs people have, to be able to let go. So think about that. If you're breathing really shallowly and quickly outward, then that should really speak highly of how you're probably living your life. And one of the cues that I had on my phone for a long time, and it's probably still on there, it goes off automatically at times. It says, how you breathe is how you live. Or you could say how you live is how you breathe. Right. But I think how you breathe is how you live is a good way of saying it, because if you are breathing short and shallow and quick and anxious, your life's probably going to feel that way too.
So a lot of it is the short in, the short out, or the long in and the short out. What about the short in and the long out? Is that an issue?
That would be better for sure. I mean, you definitely want to be breathing fully, so you don't want it to be too short in, because you do have to be able to inhale and allow your diaphragm to fully descend so that it's expanding, and then as it recoils, you can exhale out and move gases out, and even again thoughts and emotions and particles, as you said, from maybe other people.
Thanks, chemtrails. What interesting you just said about the thoughts and feelings, because what we were discovering in integrative medicine and in life and power of intention is thoughts have physical properties. Lower vibrational thoughts have a different frequency than higher vibrational thoughts, and often these thoughts or a group of thoughts or a belief system that comes from a group of thoughts gets often, and I don't know how, but I guess frequency and energetically gets lodged into our tissues somewhere in our body. And so, which then begins for the ever-going, unless it's addressed, movement towards the manifestation of a physical ailment, chronic disease, cancer, MS, Alzheimer's, whatever. So, this is, sounds a little weird and crazy, but this is what we're discovering in the latest sciences. Listen to mainstream media or your medical model out there. Start looking at people who know what they're talking about. And there's brilliant doctors out there, not only Dr. Sam, but brilliant doctors out there all around the world discussing and sharing this information. So literally, you're saying breath, and maybe breath mixed in with a little bit of consciousness of that issue can actually, if you do bring up the conscious of whatever issue you're suppressing or repressing, you literally could inhale that energy, that frequency up and out of your body?
Oh, absolutely. I think that you are on to something really important. I like to call them energetic clusters. I know there's other people that refer to them as that. I know my Qigong teachers actually use that expression too. An energetic cluster forms when there is a thought form along with possible emotions, energy that literally starts to form energetically in the body. And yes, if it is not broken, you don't have a way of having a cluster buster, which I think breathing is a wonderful cluster buster. That's why, if you notice how important breathing is, that's why it's included in yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, martial arts. If it wasn't important, it wouldn't be a foundation of all those things. Even weightlifting, correctly, has to have breath. So for you to be able to expel, I think that's even why some people find it therapeutic to go to a football game or a concert and yell and scream and cheer, do all that, because it moves things out, and it actually is a great cluster buster. You get rid of that stuff so it doesn't keep formulating and you keep running the same pathway, and that thing keeps getting bigger, because yes, it definitely will eventually physically manifest into something, either something as a tumor or even something as a condition, so to speak, medical condition, if you want to label it that, such as diabetes or cancer or fibromyalgia or liver disease or whatever you want to, whatever we're going to name it. So it just depends on what systems it's affecting, and how it's manifesting will determine the label it gets.
That is a topic within itself, and perhaps we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that later on, time given. But I do want to readdress back to the issue of, so this poor learning behavior of breathing is developed how?
Yeah, so the poor development, it can start from the physical side of stuff. I can tell you this from studying human development. If a child is born, quote, normally, again, it was a vaginal delivery, came through the pelvis, because there is a difference between that and C-sections, by the way, because one of the ways you can look at a C-section is almost like when they tell you not to come up too quickly when you're scuba diving, because it creates a pressure shift in your body, especially in your head, and it can be even dangerous. So that's essentially what can happen to a child when they're C-section born.
And it's just it's just such an option. That's like taking your appendix out. Just have a C-section. Don't worry about it. It's easier.
Yeah, they schedule them now. It's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
But so let's say it was a normal delivery, but then the child wasn't given tummy time. Okay, tummy time is not something a lot of kids always like, because you stick them on their stomach and their head's heavy, so they're just dropping their head on the floor. But that's the point, is they have to learn to pick their head up against gravity and prone prop on their elbows to start to learn how to reach and crawl correctly. When when that proper development is not.
What's tummy time? I never heard this before.
Tummy time. It's just sticking
tummy.
a kid on their
Tummy
on their
time.
tummy, on their stomach.
I
Yeah.
gotcha, okay.
Because if they don't have that, then speech, sucking, and swallowing reflexes are not developed correctly, and then breathing gets off, and that's usually when a child sometimes gets labeled maybe a little developmentally delayed, and then they end up with an OT or PT or speech therapist trying to fix all that stuff. So as convenient as these car carriers are, that and all, that's all well and good, but you got to get a kid out of those things. I mean, taking from a car and then just moving the seat around doesn't do a kid well for teaching them how to be on their stomach. So we've had an epidemic now of plagiocephaly, which is misshapen heads, because parents don't want to take their kid out of this carrier because it's convenient just moving from one place to another. But the kid has to be put on their stomach to be able to develop proper reflexes and
breathing.
Yeah, including breathing.
So this can start at a very young age, infancy. So anything at later on, going through life, other learned behavior they do?
Sure. So then learned behaviors can become about even modeling, right? Like you can want to be like your parents, and let's say your parents don't have great behaviors in terms of their posture. Mommy or daddy slouches, and you all want to be cool like dad if you're a boy, or want to be a big girl like mom if you're a girl, or you might emulate either parent. Doesn't matter what gender you are, but the point is, if they're slouching, you're probably going to slouch, and slouching, no doubt, restricts breathing. If you want to test this, it's very simple. Sit up straight and allow a deep breath in, and then slump forward. Allow your shoulders around over and stick your head forward.
Oh, you can't.
And go
you can't. It's limited to a short breath in and out.
Right.
I never even done this.
Right. And so yeah, it's that's one way to prove it to somebody very quickly. It's like it really matters that you don't restrict your breathing through really poor posture and alignment. So now we have a generation that grows up with electronics. They're texting by the time they come out of the womb. They're flexed over in a chair, playing video games all day and everything, and it's just trashing. We talked about text neck before in past shows. It's a real condition. They're destroying their neck, but also you're just, when you're hunched over, you're compressing the breathing spaces in the chest, in the pelvis, in the abdomen, even in your head, and so you can't fully express the life force in you through the breath, and that's vitally, vitally important that you're able to do. So it comes about like that, and then of course there's the browbeaten child. You suck, you're no good, you won't amount to anything, why are you wasting your time, you need to do this, you need to do that. So when you do that to a child, or even if an adult does it to another adult even, it's not a good thing. It does have an effect on the body, we know that, and that ultimately will shut someone's breathing down, because I've never seen a person browbeaten who breathes fully and deeply. They're always in that fetal flexion posture that they just shut back down, and you just see their breathing get really, really restricted.
So it's fascinating you say that, because I guess on a biological level, on even a molecular level or cellular level, you're in a fight or flight when you're in that state of mind, right?
Yes.
And so doesn't the cell actually restrict and not oxygenate itself?
Absolutely. You're going to get restriction structurally, and then you're going to get restriction even from the programming. As you had mentioned many times on past shows, the field of epigenetics, I know Bruce Lipton's work has been invaluable in that field. And when you start to think about if a child or adult perceives a threat in their environment, even if there's not, but even if it's just an emotional threat, that is going to reprogram the DNA. It's going to reprogram how the nervous system is driving function. You're either in a state of growth and repair and evolution, or you're in a state of fight or flight and survival. And you can't be in both simultaneously, as far as I know. So it's one or the other. And if your breathing is short and restricted, you're not in a growth and repair state.
Well, that makes complete sense. In fact, now thinking about it, because of the television, the media, the sympathetic nervous system always being on overload right now, our breathing, inevitably, it's so pervasive now, if I think about it, that it's almost inevitable that we're going to have poor breathing, because we're in an environment that only produces or allows you to breathe poorly. And not only that, but then you're mentoring the people who also breathe poorly as you go through. I mean, it's and plus most of us feel not enough, and most of us have negative thoughts, repetitive thoughts out of our 70,000 we have a day. So wow, it's almost inevitable that I'd probably go 99.99% of the people have poor breathing.
Bingo, tell them what he's won, Johnny. A free breathing kit. You got it.
Well, I mean, wow. That's a really big deal. And breath is, as we learned earlier, is critical to our health, right? And critical to our day-to-day mental health, as emotional, and probably even our spiritual health, if we get into that on another show. Okay, wow. We discovered this. Go ahead.
Quick question, Sam.
Yeah.
How important is it to breathe through your nose versus through
Your mouth?
Sure.
Inhaling or
Good
exhaling?
question.
Yeah, that is a great question.
You thought of that on your own?
Yeah.
It's a great question, and yeah, normal breathing most of the time really is probably going to be best just in and out through your nose. So if you're not under increased physical demand, or you're not in some interesting breathing pattern that's either some psychospiritual exercise or some deep meditation, yogic, pranic, qigong type of breath work, or somebody like Wim Hof. People ask me about Wim Hof all the time. Like, okay, that's advanced breathing, that guy is doing. Now, he does have a progression. If people actually followed his program correctly, they would do the progression probably correctly. But in and out through your nose is vitally important, because your nose actually filters the air. You have those little cilia in your nose, those little hairs that actually act as air filters. It warms, moisturizes the air, and you get higher nitric oxide levels when you breathe through your nose. Vitally important to keep the blood vessels dilated. So nose breathing for quiet breathing is a really, really good idea.
It almost feels restrictive with the air coming in and out, though, doesn't it? Like, it seems. I think I get a lot more air like this.
Yeah, well, for a lot of people, it could feel restricted breathing through their nose because they don't, and they haven't for so long. So when the body doesn't use something for a while, it tends to kind of shut down a little bit, or maybe even tissue that's irritated, it starts to thicken. But when you start to use stuff correctly, the body goes, oh, he's going to use this again, or she's going to use this again. I think I'll start to actually kind of reshape myself and relubricate myself, and actually start to use these air turbinates that we have that are vitally important for the breath to come in and out. So nose breathing is vitally important, and I highly recommend that people do that. And if you have a deviated septum or something like that, any way that you can try to fix that would be a good idea. Obviously, surgery is the last resort, but if you're labeled a deviated septum, just make sure it truly is before you're going to have surgery, because I've had a bunch of patients and clients over the years told me that, and I've worked on them structurally, and they never needed surgery, and they can breathe just fine now. Right. So don't opt for surgery first and foremost. If it's needed, that's one thing, but just know that a lot of times those quote deviated septums can be fixed sometimes without it. And
a quick label to that really fast, right?
Yeah, the other thing that is important about nose breathing is it does drive parasympathetic response, where most of the time,
really?
Yes, and most of the time mouth breathing drives a sympathetic response. So when you see somebody kind of with their mouth open, especially like looking down, yes, that's another thing that's driving sympathetic response. And now they're sitting there trying to type and concentrate, and they can't. And then they get, and they get all agitated. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what you're programming your body to do. So what do you expect? That is obviously going to happen. And mouth breathing a lot of time leads to an acidic terrain. It does change
Really?
the pH.
What about a combination, like breathe in and out in your nose and then breathe out through your mouth?
Yeah, that would be, I think, second best for if you cannot breathe in and out through your nose.
Like Pilates does that or something like
yeah,
that.
sure. You can breathe in through your nose and then out. In physical therapy, even we teach people through pursed lips, so we call it pursed lip breathing. It would be like you're slowly blowing out candles. So the cue is smell the roses, blow out the candles. So it's in and then slowly out through your mouth. That actually prolongs the exhale, which is a really good skill for people to learn how to do. So sometimes in the beginning, it is a good idea for people to just learn how to prolong that exhalation. The exhalation should be as long as the inhalation, if not a little bit longer. So if you wanted to keep it coherent, at least the same amount. So if you're breathing in for 4, it'd be out for 4. But you could even breathe in for 4 and out for 6. And that would be a good breathing pattern. Most interestingly, about nose breathing too, is one of the simple ways to do it is to hum. So think about it. If you're humming, your mouth has to stay closed.
I'm breathing right now, aren't I?
Well, you're breathing out, and then eventually you have to do what? You got it.
Yeah, I got
it.
it.
So humming is a prolonged exhalation. Humming is also a way that also something that naturally increases nitric oxide levels in the body. And kids do it instinctively until they're told what? Shut up, sit still, stop doing that, it's annoying, be quiet. And
Don't be happy and joyful. Come on.
Yeah, interesting.
Be miserable like us adults.
Kids, instinctively know to do that. And it works for tasks too. I can tell you as a coping skill for a laborious task, like I had to power wash my front steps, and I actually started to hum, and interesting enough, Mission Impossible came out. So I was like, and I started laughing because I wasn't planning on that. But no joke, I power washed that puppy for over an hour, and when I got done with that job, I wasn't tired.
You're probably energized.
I was. I felt really good.
Hey Sam, when we get back from this break, let's talk about what is proper breathing now at this point, and maybe give a demonstration too. All right.
Sure.
All right. We'll be right back with Dr. Sam Makarski, and we're talking about who knew we could talk all about breathing for an hour. I'm impressed just in that fact alone. We'll be right back.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Amy Dayries, a general and integrative dentist in Roswell, Georgia, and I'm also a spokesperson for the American Dental Association. You know, as a dentist, I tell my patients that the mouth is the window to one's overall health, just as the eyes are the window to one's soul. After working in general dentistry for the last 25 years, it has become my desire to offer good health resource information to everyone around me, empowering members of the public to become their best, healthiest selves. The Whole Healing Radio Show features practitioners from dentistry, healthcare, and nutrition about the cutting-edge techniques available. Together, my guests and I will show you how to implement lifestyle changes, achieve your personal goals for health, and heal the parts of you that may have been forgotten. When your health is intact, you can go on to manifest your ultimate dreams. Become the best version of yourself. Join me, Dr. Amy Dayries, on the Whole Healing Radio Show to learn how.
Wow. Man,
Nice voice.
not only a nice voice, but I'll tell you what, that was great music, Wahid, man. That was jamming.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
we need to listen to that in your car.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you're gonna do that for some of my shows too, man.
Yeah,
you
we
know?
gotta get. Yeah.
I heard
Yeah.
Doc has a DVD coming out or something, or CD coming out here or something. So.
Yeah, it's still a bit of a secret, but yeah.
All right,
There's
all right.
The music's coming. The music's coming.
Yeah, it's good, man.
It's all
We have
about
to
breathing.
listen.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dr. Derry, she is married, guys. So
Yeah.
you know, she has a sweet voice, but she is married.
Yeah.
But speaking of dental, that's another thing that when you are a mouth breather, actually dries your mouth out, and your salivary glands do not secrete enough saliva. And your saliva actually carries remineralizing fluid, and guess what that does? That helps prevent cavities and tooth decay.
No way.
So when you're a mouth breather, you're more prone to dental issues, and that's why it's so important at night that one, you don't eat very late at night, because then if you're too busy digesting, you can't be resting. But two, you're inevitably, your mouth will come open, and then you wake up and you have cotton mouth, and your breath could peel paint, and you know, because it's like everything is just, you know, shifted in the wrong direction. But if you get to bed on an empty stomach, and you actually get your pillow in the right place, and you're not cranking your head open, and your mouth actually stays closed, you'll find that's all different. Your mouth feels cleaner, your breath feels cleaner, and you just feel stronger in your whole fortitude.
Well, that's fantastic. Actually, incredible. I never even would have thought of that, right? So we're back with Dr. Sam Makarski. We're talking about breathing. I reach him at drsampt.com. He's Health Razor Consulting Company. So let's talk about, why don't you demonstrate what a proper breath is, and then get into why this is a proper breath. And you could go nose, mouth, I don't care which way you do it, but, because it seems like what you're saying is maybe we need to practice more nose breathing, because we have a society that's so lost into the sympathetic nervous system response, environment, that, we have forgotten to nose breathe.
Yeah, and that's a nice lead into something that, different text in scripture, so to speak. And the scripture said the breath of life was breathed through man's nostrils. His nostrils, right? So there's been a clue that maybe, hey, we should be nose breathers. But the other thing with that is there is a word in the West that we have. It's called spirita. So, that's like equivalent to chi, ki, prana, kundalini, which the East reveres, and that rides the breath. And so in the West, we have this respiration, spirita, to respirate, to reconnect with spirit over and over and over, or disconnect over and over and over, which is a nice lead into, to breathing and respirating correctly.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think one of the easiest ways to teach people to breathe correctly is if they sit quiet and they close their eyes and then actually smile. Like if you actually put a smile on your face and now go ahead and just allow some air to come in through your nose, it almost feels, I want to say, a little bit more effortless. Like you don't feel this restriction. If you try that versus not smiling, and you just have your mouth kind of relaxed and everything, and try to breathe in, you'll feel a difference in how easy it is to take
Actually,
a breath
I
in through your nose.
do. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, it's just really true.
It's one of those secrets, when you look at all the yogis and the Buddhas, they all got smiles on their face. So that's how they kind of like communicate.
And they're not happy. All right,
Yeah.
no, just kidding.
Yeah, and that's one of those secrets. Like, it's there if you see it. It's written in code, right? It's like, why are they all smiling? Well, that's because they knew breath is life, and breath supports life. It's easier to breathe with a smile on your face, and it does change your body chemistry as well. So as you breathe in through your nose, because people will often say, again, push your stomach out. And I don't like that cue, because if I force my stomach outward, that looks like diaphragmatic breathing, but it's not. I'm just pushing my stomach out, but my diaphragm hasn't actually moved correctly. If you take air in through your nose and the air comes down, then the diaphragm naturally descends and your stomach moves out as a result of you breathing correctly, not pushing it outward, because technically you should expand in all directions. So if you visualize a balloon inside your abdomen, if you were to blow up a balloon, it would, if you breathe in, that balloon expands in all directions, right? It doesn't just blow up in one direction. It'd be a weird shaped balloon, right? It's flat on one side. So you want to picture it expanding in all directions. And then once you have that, I would say you can take your visualization to everything expanding, like your bones. So think about everything getting wider and expanding as you breathe in.
Even your bones.
Even
Well, does
your
air
bones.
does air get inside your bones? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a conversation for a whole nother day. But yes, technically, I mean, it depends who you ask. But there's a technique called bone breathing, actually, that is revered in the East. And again, a lot of that is through the power of intention. So you want to everything expanding and getting wider as you breathe in, and then everything getting shorter and just kind of collapsing naturally as you breathe out. Not forcing it, but it'll just happen. And that is definitely some good cues and some good tips for people to learn to breathe. But yes, sitting up straight, sitting up tall.
Well, look at you. He's so proper. Look at him standing up tall. I mean, he's such a goody two shoes, isn't he? He's a kid in the front
He
class
looks like
giving the
one.
apple to the teacher every day. I bet.
Yeah,
Hold on.
and
let me get my Pilates position here. All right. Okay.
get tall.
All right. There you go.
Okay, so then when you think about it too, like if you were to just widen your nostrils, even the smile will do it, but if you almost widen your nostrils like there's a bouquet of flowers and you're just expanding them.
A good glass of red wine or something.
Yeah. Some people actually have to, grab their nose and pull it apart almost to start, and then the air goes like in. It's called the Venturi tube effect. Yes, like you'll get a shot. I call it a God shot, because it will light you up. You're like, whoa, like holy life force, Batman. Yeah, it'll happen. You start to feel what it feels like to be properly oxygenated. It's vitally important. But as your nostrils expand and the air just naturally comes in, you're bringing it right down along your spine and then down into your lower abdomen, and everything expands outward. At the same time, there's a natural, like I said, just a natural out breath after the inhalation. You breathe out, comfortably to a point where it's comfortable. And then there's a natural pause, and then you breathe back in again. Now, one of the other things to do with people to get them to learn how to breathe correctly is to actually breathe out first. One full breath, whether it's through your nose or your mouth. You can try this now, Tim. Just all the way to the point that you have to breathe in again. Just don't give yourself a hernia. But breathe all the way out, not quite like that, but close to that point. And then just allow the breath to come back in through your nose. Yeah, you'll get a recoil.
Yeah.
So what'll happen?
Recoil,
Yeah, you'll get
exactly
to the
this.
end, and then all of a sudden, what'll happen is, like, you don't even think about breathing in. It just happens because your body's like, need air.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, people go, "Whoa! I've never think I've ever breathed that fully inward before."
It's like I really need the air.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes the key, like when in doubt, breathe out, is the saying I give a lot of my clients and patients. If you feel like you're stuck or you're anxious, seriously, like you have to fully empty your lungs and expel the air out of your lower lobes of your lungs to actually fully inhale. So if you when in doubt, breathe out. If you breathe out first, you can actually trigger. I call that a reset breath.
Right.
I mean, I am being serious about that.
No, yeah. I get it.
It's all my Sammyisms.
They're brilliant and they're funny as they can be. Sam, I am. So we got like a minute left here, and I just honestly, we literally could have a part 2 to breathing, because we could get into the deep breathing techniques. Or whatever. We get into the
alternate nostril breathing.
Yeah. But honestly, it is amazing. And not only we talked about an hour for this, but it was just brilliant information, and information that was so needed. That breath gets very little play and very little little attention in our medical model, honestly, an acute medical model, because it's all triage, right? So I'm so glad you're bringing this up, and this is really critical. And, I'm open, Doc, if you want to come back and do a breathing, too, at some point,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the greatest truths is the best medicine we ever have is located inside of us. And one of the saddest truths is most people never realize that in their lifetime. And breath is one of those medicines.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you tomorrow. Enjoy that. Go to UI Radio and download our UI Radio network on the Apple Store, and you can listen to the show over and over again as much as you want, or Spreaker.com or wherever else. See you then. Take care.
You have been listening to The Good Intention Show on the UI Radio Network. The Good Intention